Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Brothers of the Arcana. As always, I am Alex Aldea.
I am co-host Dave Ferrigno, and today we welcome back our special guest, Brother Randy Sanders.
Absolutely. Randy, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. Once we started chatting with the guys from the Masonic Roundtable, we figured that we've been sort of studiously avoiding the concept of Masonry. And what a silly thing that is, because we're all Masons, and we should talk about it because I think it's something that people might get a lot out of, especially if they haven't joined the fraternity or are thinking about it. So I think it'd be a cool idea to do so. Dave, you want to start us off with any particular questions? Because I know I have a bunch.
No, you can start us off today.
You sure? All right.
I'm positive.
Well, let's start out with the interesting bit, because it's always curious to see how people come to the fraternity. What could you share a little bit about your journey that led you into Freemasonry, and sort of what inspired you to not only join but to continue?
I joined because I thought it was going to be more of a mystic path. I thought that I was going to go join in and jump right into some massive esoteric knowledge and be deeply rooted in incredible secrets and find out where the lost treasure, national treasure was, and go find out the secrets of the Da Vinci Code. And that didn't happen.
So suffice it to say you were disappointed.
I was, there's so many aspects to Masonry. Let's all start off with, I don't say anything that represents the Missouri or New Jersey or any of the other Grand Lodges or jurisdictions. Opinions are my own. Brothers, I know the same for you. That there's no, we're not trying to represent anybody. What we are going to do is have an open conversation and transparent conversation about
that. We will.
That's kind of important to say, because, if I'm representing the Grand Lodge, I'd probably say something like it's a fraternity and leave it at that, because the Grand Lodges, exist. Honestly, the Grand Lodges, here's my transparent opinion, is there to keep us out of trouble, keep us from doing stupid stuff. And if you've been into certain lodges and you know what I'm talking about, that they decide they're going to go off and have a pancake social at a event that we probably shouldn't be at, and cause bad light to come onto the fraternity and say, oh, you guys are mean, evil, nasty people because you associate with those people. I'm using that as a stupid example, but it has happened. It's happened. Yeah. These people think that, because we have some person who is in a different group at the same time they were in Freemasonry, that all Freemasons must be that way. And that's, besides being hysterically inaccurate to us, these people don't understand that these perceptions, generalizations don't make any sense. So, So that in mind, all of that said, I'll come back to my own path in here. So I had a little bit of time in some Chinese Kung Fu before I was, before I was initiated. And I had Masonic friends, Masonic relatives. I asked a bunch of questions. This was during the time where most people was very quiet about it. Right. And I'd ask questions, and I had a third cousin who was deeply into Freemasonry, and he'd just look at me and say, "It's an interesting observation." And he'd gently take the conversation off to another path. And I was like, okay, that didn't answer my question, but let's go with sure. What I found after I joined the fraternity was that there's so many different paths within Freemasonry, so many different things we can do. There is the fellowship aspect. There is a wonderful, wonderful fellowship aspect. You cannot get that in most other organizations. You really have to be embedded into a military unit to get that kind of cohesive brotherhood. You really have to have, when I say trial by fire, well, in the military case, that's true. They're shooting at you, right? But if we're different from the Lions Club or the Civitans or the community groups because there is that initiatic experience. Now, once that initiatic experience is done, do you pursue it? Well, that's a choice. That's an individual choice. Do you want to get deeper into what that means? A lot of people do. Not very many in the overall scheme of the fraternity. Probably, let's use a bell curve. So that would be what? 13, 14%, 15% of the fraternity actually deep dives into what the ritual, scary ritual. The ritual says, and the scary ritual is a look at yourself.
Right.
A look at yourself as you relate to deity, as you relate to the people around you. And that's all the ritual is. It's an open door. It's, if you want to pursue it, you can, but it's nothing that goes anything beyond that. So non-Masons looking at this going, Randy, I thought you were just going to give us all the secrets to Masonry. I just did. I really did. And everybody, oh, yeah, you're holding back. Well, I know this 900th degree Mason who says on the internet that all evil interplanetary galactic warriors are going to come down and zap Bugs Bunny with his ray gun.
Keep going.
And all I can do is laugh at these people and say, obviously you're not a Mason. You're looking from the outside in because there's no Bugs Bunny getting zapped by Marvin Martian that I know of. But you know what? Let them talk. Let them do their thing. Meanwhile, we're going to have fellowship. We may or may not go and choose to have cigars with each other. We may or may not choose to smoke a cigar with a glass of bourbon or scotch or whatever beverage you want to choose. It doesn't matter. And that's the beauty of Freemasonry, is that there's so much to do. Cigars and bourbon, okay, there's a few little select groups that go and do that. Great. There's other select groups that go hang out and they don't have cigars or bourbon. They talk about philosophy. They talk about the deeper meanings of life, of what the spiritual journeys mean to them. That's pretty cool too. And then, so we've got the aspects of the breadth of the fraternity. I sound like a commercial, and I hope I'm not. This is an explanation.
No, you definitely don't sound like a commercial, but yeah,
so we've got the fraternal aspect, and then we've got the historical aspect. Freemasonry is not responsible for the history of the United States, but we're deeply embedded in the history of the United States. And I'm talking as a U.S. Mason. You look at the Simon Bolivar in South America and the liberation from the tyranny of the kings at the time of Venezuela, of Colombia, of the upper portion of the continent of South America. Bolivar was very deeply entrenched in that. He was a Freemason. The ideas behind that of freedom of choice, freedom of religion, freedom to do what you want to do, that's Freemasonry in a nutshell. I believe that deeply, that is one of our God-given rights, is freedom of choice. With that in mind, so Freemasonry is in history very much embedded in all of the liberation of humanity from the from tyranny. And Albert Pike writes deeply about that in several of his books. Morals and Dogma, he probably spends over the course of the book 100 pages on fighting tyranny. And when you look at the Freemason historical aspects, okay, so we've got the social aspects, hey, let's go have a good time. You got the You've got the aspect of the historical. We all know some historians, so Masonic historians that are really good at what they do and putting this stuff together. A lot better than me. I'm not a historian.
Like Brother De Hoyos and those guys. He redid Morals and Dogma, right? So apparently it's a much easier read now than it was under Pike.
So I've got several different copies, one of which is annotated by Arturo De Hoyos, and his annotation does help. It does help a lot. Once you get into some of the other writers of the era, it's a lot easier to read Pike. He's not the only one that wrote that way. He's just the one that we make fun of because of the long run-on sentences, almost as bad as me.
He's kind of long-winded, that Pike.
He says a lot of really good stuff, though. As much as we complain about difficulty to read and all the stuff that he does, go open Morals and Dogma, read a paragraph, and just sit back and think about it. It doesn't matter which paragraph. It is. And I'm not any kind of a Pike worshiper or any kind of, oh my gosh, he's the greatest thing since sliced bread. But at the same time, I have a lot of very deep respect for what he did and what he said, because some of that understood that Morals and Dogma is his own private thoughts on the 32-degree system of the Scottish Rite. He wasn't planning on publishing that out going, hey, everybody, look what I think about this. This was things that he had compiled together and put together for himself that he could go back and reflect upon himself. He wanted to go back and be able to go, all right, I just taught this degree. It's been a few years ago. I've communicated this degree, because they actually didn't do plays, certainly no video back then, but no plays, no production, no nothing. And degrees were communicated, like me talking to you guys saying, hey, this is what happened in the degree. This is what these guys said. This is how this works. And with that in mind, he wanted his own compiled set of stuff that he could go back and review, reflect upon, think about, contemplate. And that's one of the things that we try to get across. I actually taught a class on Morals and Dogma. And one of the things I tried to get across with that is, as we go through these chapters, I don't care what's on the surface level. You guys just read what's on the surface level. Let's think about what those philosophies mean. What does that mean to you? How do you apply that? Because you can read it all day long, but if you don't apply it to your daily life or to your own thoughts, it doesn't make any sense. Or to me, it doesn't. So we look at returning to the original subject. I know it's a long time on this. I walked in because I thought I was going to get deep into symbolism and become the next, what's the guy's name? Langdon? That's the character from
Angels and Demons.
Yeah. So I thought I was going to turn into the next symbologist Langdon. Well, I did follow that path and work on becoming a symbologist, but the reality is I enjoy the fraternal aspect of the fraternity. I put up with, because I'm not a historian, the historical aspects of the fraternity. I enjoy some of it. And then there's a lot more to it. There's administrative. There's how to run a meeting. There's things that are so embedded in us now that we don't even think about. But how many kids out of high school have no idea what they're getting into when they walk into their first business meeting? They have no clue.
Right.
Oh, I did that in college. I had to work with a work group. That's not quite the same thing when you got somebody sitting across the table from you really wanting to take everything that you're saying and scrap it.
Right.
The negotiation piece, the what is important piece during a meeting. Freemasonry, that's part of Freemasonry. We learn how to have meetings. We learn how to deal with people who are not necessarily in agreement or in alignment with us. And we find ways to come together with an idea so that we do have agreement. No, yeah. Sometimes we don't, but that's anywhere. But the really cool thing about Freemasonry is we do it in a manner that is, I was about to say safe space. That has a lot of other connotations. Let's go with...
Yeah, let's not go there.
Yeah, sacred space is probably a better way of saying it.
Sacred space, yeah, exactly.
So go ahead. That was my introduction.
I love it. I love it.
I actually wanted to go into something about Pike, if that's okay.
Now he's got a question. Okay, go ahead.
So I know you mentioned morals and dogma. So obviously in that, Pike kind of described the entered apprentice, fellow craft master mason, an introduction, the symbology behind or symbolic nature of Freemasonry. I know he doesn't explicitly say it, but the phrase Freemasonry is the esoteric front porch. How do you...
He does.
Because Pike basically emphasized, layers of esoteric wisdom, right? And the deeper meaning and mysteries and degrees. But I just kind of wanted to circle back on that. And, how do you feel Pike, through his interpretation? Would you say that, he's incorporating a lot of the elements of the Kabbalah, Hermeticism, ancient mysteries, and, other philosophies into Masonic philosophy?
Absolutely yes, but maybe not in the manner that outsiders might assume. So let's take this from two different directions. I'm Mr. Joe Outsider. I know very little about Masonry, but I'm going to go knock on the door. You walk into the lodge, you see a whole lot of strange things around you, and there's a couple of columns that are sitting there, and there's an altar in the middle of the room, and you're like, huh. What am I getting into? And that's not, when you walk up to the altar in the United States, when you walk up to the altar, it's the Holy Bible.
Right.
We're not telling you must be Christian to do that. We're saying that we adopted the Holy Bible, and you've got Masonic brothers on the other side of the planet that don't have the Holy Bible on their altar, but we're still brothers. The point is that we're not a religion. We're not a religion.
Well, aren't we though?
We got people who think they are.
Well, because you got Tim Hogan saying it's the primordial antediluvian religion that we've gotten pieces of, right? And Masonry isn't the whole thing, but it's what we could salvage out of whatever that was, and then sort of move it. So I think that's an interesting thought or viewpoint. We call it a handmaiden to religion, right? So in a lot of respects, but what do you think it is?
I think that Freemasonry is an initiatic school, and the schooling is not a prescribed course that you must do this and you must do this and you must do this. We have a set of degrees that are moral lessons that are based on morality. The lessons are transcendent of just the morality, though. They work on who you are, who you really are, and your deep relationship with the divine. I really believe that. Now, I can go into some depth here, but we really don't have time for that. Apologies. What we do have, if we want to look at Freemasonry as I can't go with religion. I'm going to have to argue with Tim, and not like set myself up as being some kind of Masonic scholar. What I disagree with is Freemasonry doesn't offer a path to salvation. What Freemasonry offers is a path to your own self and better connection to deity. And you can call it all kinds of stuff.
Isn't that the same thing, though?
No. There's some pretty significant differences there. How you approach your personal connection with deity and how you relate that approach to deity is religion. How you go about your own personal journey within that religion, or if that's what you're going to ascribe to or your path, then Freemasonry gives you steps that you can take to become better within that person. Be a better moral person, be better in your religion. Freemasonry gives you a structure in which you can advance your own self in that journey. Now, the difference is you've got all the isms: mysticism, Gnosticism, Rosicrucianism, how many isms are there? There's a lot of isms out. And the isms are, Catholicism, the Baptistism. That's really not a good way to say that, but
baptism.
Baptism. There we go. All the isms, and the isms are your path, whether that be whatever that structure is that you want to use to get to deity. Freemasonry encompasses all of that, and then also restricts yourself to that. It says if you want to use this in your path to your salvation, whatever that church is, then that's an option to you. Now, if that's an individual path that's not through a specific church, we're not opposed to that, right? Freemasonry says, I don't care which God you believe in, as long as it's one single deity, as it's one single source that created everything, one creator. Now, if that one creator in your religion broke off into 72 different aspects, and those 72 different aspects are all a part or an emanation from that deity, guess what? Then that is your path. That's maybe Joe, Fred, Jim, Bob sitting over in the next building over doesn't agree with you, and that's okay. Freemasonry says that's okay. As long as you're worshiping in your manner and you're serious about devoting your life to the divine, whatever that divine is, the one divine, we're good with that. And that's the cool thing about Freemasonry. Now, back to the religion aspect. Do we have Kabbalistic things in Freemasonry? Yes, because Jewish mysticism and Islamic mysticism,
Sufism,
which is a subset of Islam, all of these, again, isms, kind of focus together. Kabbalah, if you look at Kabbalah and you look at maybe the Tree of Life and you look at the Kabbalistic approach to things, to dumb it down, Kabbalah for Dummies, I guess, it's a template. It's a lens. It's not, it's a lens. It's a structure. You can set the structure of the Kabbalah over the text that you're reading, philosophy, religious text, whatever, and say, oh, well, this text is saying ABC and Kabbalah says ABC, but Kabbalah says it this way, but it's the same thing. This is how this relates. If you understand one, then you can find the relation to the other. So Kabbalah is a really cool way of looking at other philosophies, Taoism, Buddhism, the religions of the various religions of the world. Look at the philosophies of pre and post-Socratic Greece. You can use Kabbalah to look and see why and where morality fits into Platonic and Neoplatonic writings. These guys are all saying, they're not saying the same thing. They're saying a lot of the same things, but they're saying it in different ways. And we then turn around and take the Kabbalah and say, oh, this is the pillar of mercy, and here's the pillar of severity, and they're opposites. And how do we integrate that, and how do we make sense of that? And what we're doing is we're looking at the pendulum swing. There's no difference. There's something that's on this side. There's something on this side. Light, dark, negative, positive, whatever it is. And then we find where that integration piece is. And is that something we want to pursue or not? So Freemasonry doesn't take it that far. Freemasonry says, yeah, it's out there. You can go study it. We're not going to go teach it to you. that where you said the outer porch, I'm circling all this back to the outer porch. It took a long way to get there. So Pike writes about the outer porch. He writes a book called Porch in the Middle Chamber.
Fine.
Is that right? Porch and Middle Chamber? I think that's it. And he talks about this stuff. He also talks about the outer porch as being the first part of the initiatic experience, and is a choice whether you want to go. But you got a bunch of doors into Freemasonry. And one of them is history. One of them is the social aspect, the fraternal aspect. One of them is symbolism, symbology. One of them is a deeper studies into this. One's a deeper studies into this. Is that where you want to go? You can't lump Freemasonry into all of those or any individual thing because it doesn't fit. It is. Well,
is it right to try to make Freemasonry into a more esoteric body, or to try to fix the stuff that's wrong with it, that we think is wrong with it, or any of this? I mean, you start getting into the ideas of a certain amount of frustration when, we're out for hookah with a certain bunch of guys that I'm sure you know well, and we were talking about, to some level, a bit of frustration because, you try to fix something in the fraternity, and then if three other things break, or there's other stuff that happens, and you're like, what? I'm sitting here with my fingers in the levee, and then just like five other things start springing a leak. Now, look, not everybody's going to look at it that way, right? So we want certain things to happen. Maybe we're more esoteric. We'd like to see more esotericism. Other guys couldn't give a fig about esotericism at all. They want bourbon and cigars. I'm a big bourbon and cigars guy. You're a big bourbon and cigars guy. David,
we all want bourbon and cigars.
Quite a degenerate. So, as far as that goes, we all want bourbon and cigars. But, where's there room for stuff like this?
Yep.
And whatever. Other stuff of all kinds. It just, there's got to be room for that too. So yeah, when you say outer porch, that's fine. But if we have other more esoteric things that we're parts of that is a lot of fun and very interesting, then I guess it's okay to have both and not try to make one into the other in a certain way, right? Fair enough?
In Freemasonry, we are taught that we're builders, that we're builders of the temple, that the temple is our own internal temple. We are taught that the concept of making yourself a better person is to take the rough stone that we are out there and shave off some of these rough pieces of our personalities or our being to be that better, what we typically refer to internally as the perfect ashlar or a perfectly cubical stone. All right. How that journey is, that's the beauty of Freemasonry, is how that journey affects us is an individual basis. Let me say it in a different way. There's a huge, huge outer porch. We're all on the outer porch. We occasionally pass through the door into a historical deep dive or a esoteric deep dive or a cigar and bourbons deep dive. But if we stay in that too long, then our senses get warped. And I know a lot of Masons who have taken that way too extreme. To take the cigars and bourbon thing and that is their thing. Oh my gosh, we need to start a new club. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe that's not a good thing.
Right.
And it's up to us to make sure that, it's up to ourselves to make sure that our internal ashlar is squared. Are we doing this because we're going on an extreme and this is a distraction from what we really need to do? Is that hookah bar really what we need to be doing tonight? Is that the best use of our time? And the answer may be yes.
Mhm.
The answer very often may be yes, because you have a reason to come together as a fraternity with our brothers, get together and talk, blow off steam, whatever it is that needs to happen for your better mental sanity. I don't know. But there's a reason for that. There's a reason for the esoterics. There's a reason for the history. There's a reason for the little cars in the parades running around.
There is? I'm not aware of it.
That the charity of giving children the gift of health for free is one of the best charities I've ever heard. And I love that. Maybe the guys take that a little too far at times, or a lot of times, but the concept, the underlying reasons that they do that are solid.
But
we're all on that outer porch. We live on that outer porch. We're Masons. We come together on that outer porch.
Mhm.
Certain doors, because it's an initiatic experience, have been open to us that may not be open to Joe, Fred, Jim, Bob. Guess what? We're not the only initiatic experience out there. By far, we're not the only initiatic experience out there. Let me pick on what we do in a ceremonial form, and then relate that to a way different experience.
Okay.
Almost polar opposites. We do a Masonic meeting. We come in, we open the lodge up with certain ritual that says, "Lord, please be with us." Okay, and we mean it. And we want to make a holy and sacred space. Then we meet. We argue, spoiler alert for all the non-Masons out there, then we argue over stupid stuff like whether to pay the light bill or not, which always gets paid. We argue whether a $10 a year dues increase may be out of order. We do really stupid stuff when it comes to the business meetings, but we also do really cool stuff. We occasionally have people come in and speak. We talk about philosophy. What are you doing this week? Welfare of the Masons. Who's sick? What can we do to help them? Who among us have an illness or something is there something that we can do? We're definitely going to pray for you. And then what? Is there anything we can do beyond that? Do you need chicken soup tomorrow? We'll go deliver chicken soup tomorrow. Whatever it is. Then we close the lodge. We thank deity. Thank you for being with us. We really want you to continue to be with us in all of our doings, whatever it is. And we go our separate ways. And we do what's called a festive board. In a lot of lodges, the traditions are coming back. The old traditions are coming back. They still do this in some areas. They get together and they have a meal together. Sometimes it's very formal, a very formal meal. And they have a big layout with who knows what for food, and they have who knows what for libations. I'll leave that alone. They may have all kinds of different alcohol in there. But they come together afterwards because they labored in the quarries or whatever they want to call it in Masonic terms, but they worked. Now they're going to come out and they're going to have a meal together as brothers. That's important. They're going to have a festive board of refreshment. They're using, again, Masonic terms just because they went and they worked. Okay, now it's time. They did the work. Now it's time to celebrate. Think about a Grateful Dead concert in complete opposite direction, though. These folks may have taken entheogens, psychedelics. They might have smoked THC, cannabis. They might have imbibed in all kinds of different things, trying to get whatever experience that they got, and sometimes they're going to get that experience. Hopefully it's a good one.
Hopefully.
They're going to go off and they're going to go do their own thing. And in their own way, that's their own version of an initiatic experience. Then they come together with the concert, and the concert starts, and they partake in the concert. They are part of that concert. They are part of the working of that concert, because there has to be an audience. It's a concert. And the concert experience itself then becomes their own version of a festive board. We're not alone in what we do in Freemasonry. Now, I don't know of anybody taking entheogenics before they walk into a lodge. Certainly think that would be, I cannot imagine doing something like that. I cannot imagine any of us doing that. But the point is, that's polar opposites. We do it this way. They do it this way. You got so many other groups that have some kind of initiatic experience that do things in their own manner. Boy Scouts
let's talk about that. Yeah, so you got the York Rite and the Scottish Rite, the two main branches off of the Blue Lodge. How would you say their teachings and rituals differ from the Blue Lodge and from each other?
Okay, there is not a secret in how this connection works. There are some jurisdictions that will not be real happy with me saying this openly, but a lot of other jurisdictions are completely open with it. And once you get that many jurisdictions that are telling openly things that exist out in Freemasonry, then I can't imagine it's any longer a secret. You've also got, I can think of half a dozen authors that have explicitly said this. So before anybody comes after me for saying this, go look at your library.
Right.
Okay. Freemasonry is looking to do two things. They're looking to build the perfect ashlar, and they're looking to find the lost word. Now, everybody has a lost something or other. Templars are looking for the Holy Grail.
The Grail. Right.
The Grail. That is the quest for the Grail. No different from us looking for the lost word. The Rosicrucians are looking for the internal flame. The Gnostics are looking for the internal spark. You go down the list, and there's always something you're searching for. So all these people are out searching. In our ritual, in rituals across that, many of these things are just right out in the open because they don't understand that it probably should be a little bit more hidden. It says, I'm going to give you something instead, because we're not going to be talking about that lost word right now. No, I'm going to give you a little substitute or something on the side, because maybe you're not ready for it. But you will be ready sometime, and in some future time, you're going to find the Rite that gives that to you. That's the only place that it's spelled R-I-T-E. Go look and prove me wrong. Only place that is not spelled R-I-G-H-T. It's spelled R-I-T-E. What are the only two rites that are adopted in your jurisdiction? York, Scottish.
Memphis and Mizraim. No.
I love that answer. What I just said is not a secret. Scottish Rite and York Rite, both, all these guys. I just came from a York Rite conference. Love those guys. I'm about to go to a Scottish Rite conference. Love those guys. They're fantastic.
Yeah.
What do they come into Blue Lodge and say? Well, if you want to learn more about Freemasonry, join the York Rite. If you want to learn more about Freemasonry, come join the Scottish Rite.
Mm-hmm.
Why are they saying that? What did I just say?
Because they need butts and seats.
Yeah. So, and when you put that together, okay, so the York Rite and the Scottish Rite are the colleges of Freemasonry. You just graduated high school. Now they're the colleges of Freemasonry. You're going to go learn so much more about Freemasonry. Well, I hope you do, but there's not a whole lot of people out there. There's a few of us out there that are teaching, but there's not so very many out there that are actually teaching what those symbols mean and what you can do with those symbols, how to apply them. And so we're told in Blue Lodge ritual that, hey, this is good stuff. You keep working on this, you're going to find it someday. And if you don't find it, then here's a hint. And can somebody do a full experience, initiatic deep dive and do everything that they need to do with just the Blue Lodge degrees? Yes, that's why we say things like there is no higher degree than Master Mason.
Right.
If you seriously deep dive, then the answers are there. Most people aren't going to do that deep dive. And those that do are going to find, oh, there's other brothers that are doing this deep dive, and I can find them here, or in the York Rite, or the Scottish Rite, or whatever. There are other places that these exist. Now, I personally love Scottish Rite, love York Rite. I think those organizations, oh my gosh, they have so much depth in symbolism, and the degrees are beautiful. You watch the degrees, you go, wow, somebody put a lot of thought into that, because they're, lots of lines to remember. I'm not a ritualist. I appreciate those guys that can just ramble off lines and lines and lines. They're very good at what they do. So there's a lot of beauty there. The Templar orders, oh my gosh, those things are gorgeous. You just sit and watch those. Don't let them actually, because here's another secret. Almost never do they have enough people for all the parts in the ritual. So I'm going to grab people off the sidelines. You be this person. You take this role. You take this part. If you can actually get to a point where you can sit back and watch and just appreciate the beauty, oh man, what an experience. So coming back to your point, there are, it's hard to put into words. Yes, I'll leave it with this. Chuck Dunning wrote a book. Let me put this up here. This is all about using just the three. And it's not a huge book. It's a good book. It's around a couple hundred pages. On using Freemasonry for the mystic experience, for your own personal journey.
Oh, that's interesting.
Right? Yeah. You don't have to go into the upper degrees. Now, he's got other books out there that do go into the upper degrees. So he's not saying one's better than the other. He's saying this is something that everybody has to make that decision on their own with, right? That's what we all, freedom of choice, freedom of direction. So I don't want to put words into Chuck's mouth, so I'm going to leave it with, there are books out there that talk about the initiatic experience. There's books out there that talk about Jamie Lamb's Approaching the Middle Chamber. What a great book on the fellowcraft degree and the concepts behind, not just the degree, but the concepts behind it. And, there's a lot of Masonic authors out there. The lay people are going to read this and they're not going to understand half of it. And that's unfortunate. It uses a whole lot of Masonic speak when you start talking about, smoothing your ashlar instead of saying working on your personality, or in maybe in Jung's concepts, working with the shadow self to get rid of some of these nasty things that you've accumulated over the years, right? So facing some of these things that you've worked with and working through them and getting into the deepest aspects. Here's another secret. We don't make a big deal of this, but it's true. You forgive yourself for the bad stuff that you've done in the past, and suddenly everything opens up. That's no secret to Masonry. You got Alcoholics Anonymous, roughly the same thing. I've never been through AA, but I understand it. And I see the same parallels. I see the same parallels with the seven steps of highly productive people, whatever it is. And those programs that are based on this, parallel Freemasonry. Imagine that. So, sorry. Okay, so I'm done. You guys.
Well, so it's an interesting point because you know so much clearly, even in this interview, extremely complex topics. How do you introduce these topics to a new member?
Oh, I know.
Where do you meet him in the conversation that he may be in? Well, I'm not talking about talking at it in depth, but how do you at least put down some seeds maybe, or some ideas for how you want that to be the case? Maybe for later, if you see something in them that you think, well, this might be the path for them.
So I have a talk. If I'm addressing a lodge and I have 30 minutes, 45 minutes to talk about something, I've got a talk that covers the concepts of baby steps into the esoterics, baby steps into symbolism, that things mean more than they appear on paper. Our ritual's full of this stuff, right? We have things that we say that may have 7 different layers of meaning if you take it from different angles, some different concepts or different perspectives. And if you look at Freemasonry as a path to self-improvement, then what does this part of the ritual mean? Why does it mean that? What does that mean to you that you can go apply that tomorrow? Maybe those are the words that I use, sometimes I do, that I use with new members to get them thinking and chewing on something, as if I know that they like to go clubbing every weekend and they aren't very productive on the weekend because they're hungover, never happens to any of us, that, hey, maybe Saturday morning we can look at taking a deeper look at some of the ritual. There's 2 reasons I say that. One, they're going to be hungover the first time they do it. Make them think about things. Give them a whole lot of water with maybe a little sugar added so it can help clear that hangover up. But the next piece is, subtly, I'm explaining a little bit more of the ritual. I see lights go on in their eyes going, And as soon as I see that, I'm going to stop, because they need to chew on that for a while. There's something that needs to percolate in there for a bit. I like to ask questions. I'll come up to somebody, when I know that they're looking at things. We have a Mason that recently approached me saying, I'm not getting it. I'm not understanding why we're doing what we're doing. Is this all there is? And he's been exposed to the green beans and stale coffee, but he hasn't really gotten.
You guys have green beans over there too? Why is it the bane of all Freemasons everywhere?
Because it's easy. It comes out of a can, and you can pretend like it's a green vegetable on the plate. Which seems to me the reason. I don't know. It's when he came to me, I said, it's a deeper discussion. Why don't you spend come on out and spend about an hour or 2, and we'll just go hang out and talk about some of the ritual pieces, because that's a great introduction to it. I said, have you ever just sat down and thought about why somebody said something ritual wise in the lodge? Or have you, we get introduced to the symbols of Freemasonry, these super secret symbols that are out in public for everybody to see. Have you ever just sat and stared into space and thought about why we use the square and compasses? Why every Masonic building has squares and compasses? Just just from what we say about the square squaring our actions, and the compass circumscribing our actions, so that we keep, so that we don't go do out of bounds stuff, and we keep our actions within our own morality or our own structure. Just that alone. You ever think about that? What does that mean to you? And then I shoot, that right there could be a novel.
Yeah, it certainly could be.
So that's just two of the symbols, or one, square and compasses. On its own could be a novel. And here we have, I don't know, dozens, hundreds over history, probably hundreds, and we're definitely in the hundreds over history. So when we look at this stuff, oh my gosh, if you want to go into super symbolism, go look at the Renaissance painters. They were hiding all kinds of stuff from the church because they didn't want to go get their heads chopped off. And the funny thing is, the church commissioned most of them to do it. So, and the hidden stuff in plain sight is like, the cathedral picture of God and man coming to a point, touching, is not a whole lot different from the concept of Jacob's ladder.
Right.
But it doesn't have Jacob's ladder in the picture. Doesn't have that concept in there. There are a lot of angels in that picture, but they're off to the edges. In the painting, I should say. What was Michelangelo thinking? He's thinking he didn't want to get his head cut off, so he put the stuff in a way that was not crazy. If you go look at the David, the one hand is huge. I mean, it really is like this big, and the other hand's about like so. More normal size. The David is 14 feet tall, 12 feet tall.
Yeah, it's a big statue.
These symbols out there are in plain sight. Nobody's hiding anything. Freemasonry isn't hiding anything except the how to recognize each other piece. The rest of it's all out in the open. We just put it into a little compact little set of, we call them degrees, but they're little morality plays, and say, oh, by the way, if you look at this symbol, it means don't be a dumbass. Really. That's how you look at these symbols, you go, this is how you live a moral life. Don't be an idiot. And suddenly things start dropping into place. Oh, you mean if I don't be an idiot, then better things happen to me, and I start focusing on positive things, and positive things come to me? Oh my gosh, this is great. Then they go off and do something stupid again, and stupid stuff comes to them. You can't stop them.
And you can't fix
either
it.
For them.
You can't fix stupid, Randy. You just can't.
No,
so what do you
tried to fix?
Not you. What about the idea of the Masonic legacy? Have we completely, trodden it underfoot in terms of what these original Masons are trying to do? How good a job are we actually doing at preserving the original legacy of Freemasonry, whatever that happened to be? And before you start answering that one, I will say that, and we did talk about Dr. David Hawkins last time around, the idea of keeping holy company, which is why I think, yes, it's not a religion, but it's pretty close in certain respects, because what we do when we're together, when we experience the mystic tie, I think we're better for it. And when you leave, you're a better man than when you walked in there, ideally, if you haven't argued over stamps too much and whatever else we do. But yeah, please go ahead. What are your thoughts?
I want to argue about stamps. Just kidding.
All right, let's do it.
One of the things I did when I was master, the way we did it.
When I was master, Pluto was a planet.
That's right.
Yes.
Yeah, and that's another topic to get into later about people that have been Masons for 40 years that think they know better than everybody or whatever else. We'll get into that. Sorry.
Dave's favorite topic.
No, there's no fixing Masonry. When I give a talk and somebody starts down the path of the way we're going to fix Masonry is to do this. We got to stop this and do this and whatever. I always ask them very nicely and redirect the conversation to after the meeting or after the presentation or after other questions have been asked, because they're not wrong. They may not be right, but they're not wrong. I'm happy to hear every brother's idea no matter where that comes from, on what they believe is going to fix Masonry. Because oftentimes when we get to that second level of what they're saying, and we drive down to the core of what they're saying, it really comes down to, are you doing your entered apprentice lessons? Did you actually follow what they were saying and follow your entered apprentice lessons? And the lessons being, well, you know better than I do what those entered apprentice lessons are. Are you being the better person that you promised you're going to try to be?
Right.
Really? Are you not talking behind other people's backs? That's a big one. Bunch of gossips. Can't get rid of half the gossiping in any.
The whole fraternity is just a massive sewing circle of just like, they're all Madame Defarges just sitting there knitting and saying, I hope they guillotine that guy. No, I'm kidding. But not that much.
That might be more of a.
Sadly, you're not kidding, though. They're not knitting, but they're definitely.
That is not just any one jurisdiction. Oh my gosh. It's across the board. Can you get a bunch of people that are passionate about what they do, and they're not circumscribing those passions? They're out there just blasting away. Nice. That doesn't help. Exactly.
Yeah.
And then and to me, it gets worse as it progresses upward in the hierarchy.
Oh, yeah.
Well, there's something to be said for that. We don't want to pin Randy down on that one. He may have aspirations for higher things at Missouri.
I love my Grand Lodge officers to death. I do. And the Grand Lodge officers I've met in your jurisdiction, fantastic guys. Really.
The truth is, Randy, though, is you don't want Grand Lodge running your lodge, if at all possible.
Yeah. And I said this the other day at the York conference, and this is a very true thing. Grand Lodge is there to make sure your lodge doesn't do stupid stuff. Mm-hmm. As long as you're doing Freemasonry and you're not letting your passions get circumscribed, and you're not doing things out of bounds, and you're being transparent in what you're doing, and you're holding people accountable for what they're supposed to be doing. Those are as long as you're doing that, then the lodge is going to function fine. When you get people that are out of balance, when you get people that are trying to do things under the table, when you get people that are not being transparent, suddenly things start to be a little wonky. And that's what the Grand Lodge is for. Now, is a Grand Lodge actually going to come in and do something? We've known too many Grand Lodge officers that are, I hate to say wishy-washy, but they're not confrontational. And you need your Grand Lodge is kind of the parent, right? They need to step in and go, bad lodge, don't do that. And the lodge needs to go, okay, we're not going to do that anymore, and move on. It can be taken to an extreme. You do something really stupid, people are going to get expelled. It is what it is. But that is the deepest and worst of the punishments, and it really has to be held in reserve. When people are expelled, you're taking their brotherhood away from them. Oof, that we throw that term out there. I've heard several folks, famous folks, these people just need to be expelled from the fraternity. I'm not sure that should never be the first punishment or response to any situation. This person is a felon. This person's a felon. What kind of felony? Really?
Well,
because
that could be asked.
If there is something that they have done, was it something that we should be taking a look and saying, oh yeah, you can't be a part of this fraternity ever anymore, anywhere? Because what you've just done is say, that is so heinous a crime that we must dissociate from you. You guys do understand that if you're speeding over a certain amount of miles per hour in certain states, it's a felony?
Well, in Virginia has that. If you go over 80 miles an hour, you're committing a felony.
When you start saying all felons must be expelled, you're going to expel somebody because they have a lead foot. Or maybe they were caught in a circumstance that is credible, but they still got the felony for it. Maybe.
Well, let me ask you this:
somebody to the hospital and they couldn't get an ambulance in time. How many times have you seen police cars go flying down the road at over 80 miles per hour?
Sure.
And this, so
there's a past there's a past grandmaster that I've spoken to who I hold in very high regard, but he is of the opinion that if you tell a grandmaster to go F himself, you should be expelled from Freemasonry because that's such disrespect that you should be expelled. And I said, the whole point of a grandmaster is everybody should express their opinions in terms of who you are. You're the guy who's running stuff. It doesn't put you above anyone. In fact, you're the biggest servant of all in that sense, or you should be. So you don't hold yourself up to this highfalutin standard where no one's allowed to criticize me or tell me I'm doing bad or launch an opinion, even if it's the F word. I mean, look, if you really hate the guy and he's bothering you constantly, all right, maybe you suspend him during your year, get him out of your face or whatever it is, if it's really that bad. But to expel someone forever, it just seems way too over the top.
Well, and the thing is, you would imagine as brothers, you should be able to speak your opinion to that person regardless, because we're all on the level. So,
well, that is the actual point, right?
I'm not saying to personally attack the individual, but if they have legitimate reasons and points for saying it, you know, I would hope that that leader is open-minded enough to say, okay, you know, I understand where you're coming from and why.
Right.
Let me address that.
I have not read more than 4 Masonic monitors of public ceremonies, so I don't know what's in New Jersey's. But in the 4 that I have read, every one of them, when you have when you install a master or a grandmaster, the words accompanying that installation are, to this office we're putting you into, and to the brethren you are going to return. It doesn't say you're going to be grandmaster forever. Guys, there are some jurisdictions, as soon as you hit Right Worshipful, that is only your title for the time that you are in office.
I actually agree with that 100%. I wish that was the case in New Jersey, because it would stop a lot of these guys from continuing to believe that there's something that they're really not. When your life is a shambles or you've got nothing going on and you derive your validation as a man and as a success from what you've been able to accomplish in the fraternity, you're on tilt, bro. You're off kilter, because then you're holding the fraternity as the end all be all of who you are as a man and as a success, instead of saying, well, I was able to accomplish X, Y, and Z in my life. Freemasonry is just a piece of that. It shouldn't be the whole thing.
Exactly. We're talking about Freemasonry overall, and from an outsider's viewpoint, this is something that's very important to understand about the fraternity. We do hold ourselves on the level with each other. There are a few individuals that come in that seek power, and they don't understand that that's not what this is about. If they're seeking power, they're at the wrong place. Because I didn't get any extra power when I walked into the fraternity. Oh my gosh. And me putting myself into a position of authority doesn't give me any power. Maybe I'm a big fish in a very, very, very tiny pond. Very tiny pond.
Sure.
That doesn't give me squat. There's, any chief of a hospital is going to have a whole lot more power and authority than I'm going to have ever. Sure. As a master, grandmaster, whatever, within the fraternity, because we're not that big. We don't have bajillions of members globally. Right. We don't have a million members in the United States guaranteed.
I think I've read figures where people said we're around 3 million in the US. I don't know if that's even remotely close to accurate, because I feel like
maybe worldwide, not in the US.
Yeah.
Maybe worldwide.
But I feel like I still feel like you go to most lodges, you might have the same 15 to 20 people that are active.
Yeah.
If you have an exceptional lodge, maybe there's 30.
Yeah.
But the majority of membership really isn't there.
Yep. For all the conspiracy people out there wondering what I'm going to say next, just watch us try to plan a spaghetti dinner. We're not going to be taking over the world. It's not going to happen. Just watch us try to pay the bills. It's not going to happen. These people will. You get people who are very passionate about the fraternity, and they're going to express their opinions. Me. And my opinion is that we don't need to be arguing over whatever. In my year, what I did was take all the business and put it to committees, and those committees would have a yes, no, up, down vote. If it included paying the bills, whatever the bills were, that committee will have already talked about it over dinner, over whatever. They're going to come in, they're going to say, here is the committee for the pizza booth at the Shoe Shine Festival. I have no idea. It doesn't matter what. Whatever that committee is, they're going to come in, they're going to say, we want to spend $150. We're going to do this, 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 and this. We've already talked about this. Pretty much everybody's in agreement. I'm going to say, is there any discussion on this? And there's not going to be, because everybody's already talked about it. And it'll be a yes, no vote. And we move on. That is, am I saying perfect world stuff? I was able to do it. Some people are not going to be able to. That's okay.
I think in most circumstances, though, that is, I mean, even, and I just know our jurisdiction, but they tell us our business meeting starts at 7:30. We should be done no later than 8:15. And realistically, you should be back downstairs and having a program, whatever that, if it's a lecture, if it's some kind of, event you're doing, camaraderie, people hanging out, whatever else.
Mm-hmm.
In my years, I tried to have a lecture every single meeting. Both of you
did have a lecture every single meeting.
Yeah, and I appreciate both of you speaking at the lodge numerous times. It was fantastic having you in my years. But with that being said, I think you're absolutely right. You could streamline things. The committees are there for a reason. And I feel like, yes, obviously there might be some controversial topics or issues you have to address and discuss openly in lodge, but realistically, those things should be addressed for the most part outside of lodge. And to your point, you should be able to just go upstairs, get the work done, or whatever level you're on. We'll have the second level. So it's, maybe not upstairs for some individuals, but I just mean in the lodge room. But with that being said, I agree with one thing that Alex pointed out, and Randy, you were also alluding to. I feel like a lot of individuals let their ego play too much into their Masonic careers, because at the end of the day, we're all supposed to be on the level. And it doesn't matter if you're the Grand Master. It doesn't matter if you're an entered apprentice that just came into the fraternity. You should be treated as an equal. And, I always kind of say, it's like the whole self-aggrandizing or just feeling super important and pounding yourself on the chest. I mean, even in the master's obligation, then, when they're giving you, the ancient charges, when they're saying, it's like you could feel that pride, but it's like you're there to serve everyone else. And that's important to always remember.
If we could just, here's how we fix Masonry. It all boils down to do what you just said. Leave your ego at the door if you can. And the other piece of Masonry is, how do you work on making your ego go away or controlling the ego? I should say it this way. Ego is not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes we need that ego to move us forward, get us through whatever bad situation we might encounter. The excess of the ego, taking that pendulum to the far side, always has to come back to center. And if it's held there, if it's held up into that far side, not allowed to come back to center, that's where we have issues. That's what Freemasonry is trying to fix, in each of us. The Freemasonry is giving us the lessons that says, hey, with ego, it has to swing with the pendulum. You have to bring that ego back to center and circumscribe it at some point. Brother Alex, you had said, you had asked, what is my opinion on the state of Freemasonry, whether we're too esoteric, not esoteric enough, etc. And then the answer is, we're where we need to be at the moment. I do see that we're on a uphill battle to bring more education to the fraternity. And education is way overused right now. Everybody's saying the word education. Oh my gosh. But the reality is, when we're doing what Brother Dave said, bringing in lecturers, and we're bringing in people to give us different opinions and different things that we can think about. And some of that is going to be historical. Some of that is going to be esoteric. Some of that is, and when I say esoteric, oh my gosh, everybody goes crazy because I use the word esoteric all the time, but symbolic. Okay. So we're going to talk about symbols and things that are philosophy, things you can go read tomorrow. I'm not saying anything. You can't go read Plato, go read the post-Platonic, Neoplatonic writers. Go look at the, go read. Instead of saying you've done it, go actually read the Egyptian Book of the Dead, right? Oh, everybody! Oh, I read about that in D&D when I was playing Advanced Dungeons and Dragons, or whatever it is. It doesn't. What I heard about that book in philosophy, therefore I'm an expert on. Yeah, it doesn't work that way. Go read it. Go read these things. Don't go read somebody else's interpretation of it. Go read your own interpretation. Go read it for your own interpretation. And suddenly, when you read these original authors and you read this interpretation, you say, that's not what he said. Suddenly, things start popping up into more clarity. And it's not me just sitting here going, okay, go read 20 books. Think about how you're getting your information. Is it from somebody who is interpreting it for you, or are you getting it from the source? And then from that source, where did they get it? What made them think that way? What was the cause of them thinking that way? Critical thinking in your own exploration. Critical thinking in your own exploration of these concepts is what's going to move us to that next level of understanding of, I hate to say enlightenment, but let's go with enlightenment. I feel enlightened every time I talk to you, brothers, because now I'm thinking about new things that I get to go reflect upon and contemplate, because that's how I learn. Now, where is Freemasonry? It's where it needs to be right now. We've got Grand Lodges that are focused on membership. They are struggling because they've got budgets that are built on having 3 times more members than what we currently have. I hate to tell them this, they need to cut their budgets. They need to focus on cutting the budget now, putting a process in place that will allow for flexibility to move to the next level.
Right.
Does that mean that I'm going to be the next grand whatever, we go be put into Grand Line? I hope not.
Yep.
That's not my path. I don't want any part of the administrative part, because it takes away from what I love about Freemasonry, and that is working with you, working with symbologists, working with people that are interested in deeper meanings within the craft. But we still need the historians.
Yeah.
We still need the people. We still need the people that are going to take time to do the research. One of the things that I got almost turned off and burned out about within Freemasonry, I'm going to pick on something that we as a craft do. We focus on George Washington being, the founding father of the country, but, people not in Freemasonry are going to understand that he was also approached to be the Grand Master of all of America. And he said, no, I don't want to be Grand. We just got out from under one person ruling everything. Why do I want to be Grand Master of an organization within the country? You guys should follow the state model and be self-directed. Work with each other, but be self-directed. I think that's awesome. That's wonderful. Then we have all of the Masonic historians that say George Washington slept here.
Right.
Means nothing.
Yeah,
Means nothing.
that is true.
Now, to change that point, I heard Moises Gomez come on at a Scottish Rite meeting, come in and do an education on George Washington, and he left me speechless because he put context into it. Suddenly it wasn't just, George Washington was here. He was like, because this was happening and he had to make this kind of decision. And because this was happening and this decision happened, these other events happened. I'm like, why doesn't, this is the kind of history that we need. Oh my gosh. Moises is awesome.
And yet he is criticized for being too much of an amateur historian, and other guys, well, we're real historians because we are in Quattro Coronatus or, all this other stuff. And the truth is, Mo knows probably 10 times what those guys know. And he's one of the kindest, most decent people I know. In fact, I just had cigars with him last night. He's just an absolute lovely human being. So
he's the embodiment of Masonry, honestly.
Absolutely. My point to this is, and to Alex's point, I don't care who criticizes him. And if they do, they don't understand, because he can relate a historical fact to a context that we can use. If I just sit here and say, okay, I'm going to be an educator. Oh, great. I'm an educator. So what? I'm going to teach you what? That this is a keyboard? Oh, wonderful. Okay, because you've never seen a keyboard before. And then what I'm going to do is turn around and now, as somebody who can communicate, I hope I'm going to be able to say, this is how you use it. Because education, for education's sake, is trivia.
Yeah.
Right? Education for education's sake is trivia.
You're absolutely
Historical education for history's sake is trivia, unless you can apply it.
Right.
And application is everything. Oh, Randy, you're into that contemplative studies stuff. So what? You know what? Because you said so what, I'm going to leave it at that. It's okay. Somebody else comes to me and says, how does that work? I'll explain how it works.
And why it's important.
And why it's important, and how to make it a part of yourself, and how to take those lessons and be better from it. Because that's my focus. I am a contemplative. I am a esotericist. I am a symbologist. That is what I want to do. Does that make me some kind of super duper scholar? No, that makes me somebody who's focused in this one area. Now, if somebody else wants to call that scholarly work, I might argue with them a little bit, because that doesn't necessarily equate, but that's what I do. That's what I love to do. Now, the Grand Lodge, those folks need to be administrators. They have to be administrators. They have to make the tough choices. They have to do all of that with transparency, with understanding that we're on the level. The historians need to figure out how, if some of them do, some of them don't, figure out how to make that contextual. Arturo, when he was doing the Morals and Dogma annotation, made it contextual. When you read Morals and Dogma, and he said there, okay, hey, this is why he said it that way. That's critical. You get your own perspective. You get to think about why Pike might have written it this and this way. But if you don't understand that, Pike was a Civil War general for the Confederacy. But people don't understand, he wasn't sitting there going, slavery is awesome. He never said that. He never said slavery is the way to go. What he was co-opted into the army and he did his duty as he was being told to do it. And as he was working to do his duty to his country, it happened that he was on that side. You look at his philosophy and his writings, he never defends slavery. He's always all about the freedom of oppression, not the other way around.
Well, let me ask you this. Yeah, because there are some tales that he was part of the Ku Klux Klan, or at least the beginning pieces before Nathan Bedford Forrest created the Klan. So, what can we say there? I mean, yeah,
I don't. I would have to see evidence that that was true, because you look at the philosophy that he wrote and what he had he never meant to publish Morals and Dogma. So that is about as close to internal philosophy as you can get. He never meant for other people to read that. That was his own notes on the degrees and such. And he goes on and on and on about duty and getting away from tyranny and the equality of man. He doesn't spend any time sitting here going, except for this race. Never. And in fact, here's another piece about Pike that a lot of people don't know. He spent a lot of time arguing at the Supreme Court level for Native Americans. Now, how do you equate being racist, being anti one group, when he's fighting for the rights of an adjacent group? I don't see the equation there. I've been in Pike's library at House of the Temple. I've read. I can't say I'm a Pike scholar. What I can say is what I've read has nothing like that in any of it. You get a lot of there are a lot of people out there who, frankly, they virtue signal. They go down the path of, again, it's the same thing we talked about at the beginning of this conversation, right? Oh, this little piece exists, so this big thing that may not correlate, this must be true about the whole group. No, one little piece does not mean, okay, Randy played a trumpet and saxophone and what's called a mellophone in high school band. Therefore, Randy's a musician. He's one of those evil musician guys. Randy's about as far away from being a musician as you can possibly get. I made it through high school. I made it through playing those instruments. But to call me a musician because I have that one little piece in my history, yeah, that's not a correlation. So suddenly you have to take things in context. People take stuff way out of context all the time. Did he serve in the Civil War? Yeah, he served his duty.
Right.
Did he serve for the wrong side? Well, unfortunately, I believe so.
Well, Lee was like that too. Robert E. Lee he felt it was his duty to support his state. It wasn't so much that he wasn't a fan of slavery. In terms of that. So very interesting.
Exactly. There's so many things that we can get sidetracked upon instead. And again, have those people, the people that have come to you and said, hey, he was part of this group and he might have actually helped form KKK. I don't know that. I don't believe that that's true until I see proof, just because of the philosophy that he wrote.
Right. It doesn't reflect that. Yeah. It
doesn't reflect that. And what until I see the proof that happened, I'm going to go with no. What I can say is all of these people lived in a very, very different time. And we can look backwards through our lens and say, well, society's this way today. That means they must be of that way. No, that's not true. There was a very different thought process during that time. There may have been people that were very adamantly opposed to slavery that we'll never know, because there's nothing that we can take into context to show that existed at that particular time. There's so much that we lose in the historical context. This is one of the reasons why I think Moises had such a powerful, powerful presentation in one of his others on the Underground Railroad, and how Freemasonry was involved in helping the Underground Railroad. This is not, one does not equate the other. So that's it's a context thing, and it's something that's very, very powerful. Some of the other Masons in New Jersey, I'll get into this later, but some of the other Masons in New Jersey have reached out to me on occasion and said, did you think about context in this thing that you wrote? Because there's some things you didn't know. And I love it, because then I start to get the next piece. Okay. All right, then. Now I can take this to the next level. Now we can all learn from context, because now I have another door open to me to go explore. So sorry to go off on that, but that's a...
No, but you started talking about how Masonry is the front porch of certain esoteric ideas. Some people call it a clearinghouse of esotericism, where basically people come in and then they sort of shoot out from there to various other things. So where do you think this intersection lies between Freemasonry and other esoteric or philosophical systems that you've studied? For instance, like Golden Dawn or Rosicrucianism, Martinism, whatever's out there that it gets into that idea.
All of the isms?
The Illuminati.
Yeah.
I think
the Illuminati, sure.
The Illuminati. Oh, okay. I don't have... What I will say about the Illuminati is this. They don't exist as they did back in the early German years when the order was started. Anybody looking deeply into the history of Illuminati understands that the Illuminati was basically a college social club that was focused on being moral at the time. That concept got perverted, and the Illuminati pretty much went away late 1800s, early 1900s. I don't know that, again, not a historian. Don't be throwing things at me. No tomatoes from the audience. The Illuminati pretty much ceased to exist. There's a lot of people that have come back later. No Masons that I know of. They're saying, "Oh yeah, I'm an Illuminati." I see a lot of that on the internet. If you send them $29.95 and your bank account number, they'll include you in the program.
Those are obviously scammers, but there's a great, I'm going to try to look them up here while we're talking. There's a great thing that Dan Scatone turned me on to that was a, let's see here, subscriptions. This guy, it's called Restoration of the Breach. It's another YouTuber. Very interesting. And it talks a lot about Kabbalah, talks a lot about interesting things, and they have some, how do we call it? They have some off branchings of Illuminati behavior after those 40 years when Weishaupt was no longer really involved. They said that Weishaupt had started the Illuminati along with one of the Rothschilds and some other things that were in and around that area. There were other, and then apparently there was a sort of a cult of Judaism that had been excommunicated from Judaism, from the regular Judaistic idea, and started their own very magical, very out there, strange stuff. And they sort of continued Illuminati in the shadows, and they've moved on from there. I don't have any evidence to say that. This guy's the only one I've ever heard that's even made that case. But nonetheless, interesting stuff. As far as that goes,
we could
probably worthy of further study, but I mean, there's a lot there, but if you want to go down those rabbit holes, obviously.
So interesting you say that. To answer your question, what is Freemasonry? Freemasonry is an outer porch. There's a lot of doors. Do you want to go through one? Up to you. It's not my place to tell you yes or no. It's not my place to tell you one's better than the other, because, you know, all of these paths were created by somebody who decided that their way of trying to connect with the divine was better than the other ways, or this is what they found and it worked for them. So they're going to turn around and say, this is the best I can do. Tao Te Ching is a great example of this. It's written as hey, this is my path. I think this is the way to do this.
Mm-hmm.
If you look at the philosophy from my perspective, then the Tao Te Ching is because I wrote the Tao Te Ching, then I'm going to be the greatest religious leader on earth. No, it's a philosophy book. But other people looked at that and said, hey, that's a cool philosophy. The Bible is a little bit different. The Bible is focused on the attainment of salvation.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. This is how Tao Te Ching is all about how to live your best life here. It does talk about spiritual concepts, but it's focused on what we do here. Freemasonry is focused on what we do here. If you want to talk about getting to the divine in the afterlife and being saved, then you've got the religions. Okay. So this is kind of summing up what you just said. When you're talking about going to these other isms, Rosicrucianism, Catholicism, any of the isms, Gnosticism, it doesn't matter what ism it is. These different philosophies are your own path. Freemasonry incorporates a lot of these philosophy nuggets, not the entire philosophy. I don't go into Freemasonry and expect to learn a Rosicrucian lesson or a Martinist lesson or a Gnostic lesson or a whatever lesson, because I just don't expect that that's going to happen. And it's not. There may be a presentation that links some aspect to Freemasonry, but each symbol is meant to be explored on your own. And if that doesn't, if I say, hey, this symbol has a relationship to Gnosticism, and you don't see that relationship, does that mean that relationship exists to you? It shouldn't. And the Freemasonry is the same way, right? Freemasonry says, here it is. Here's the surface level explanation for this. And we want you to contemplate on this and think about what that means to you, and how you can be a better person because of that. And if that then relates to your path to the divine, your salvation path to the divine, then it should. Then it means something to you. You can take it as far as you want to take it. That's the beauty of symbolism. That's the beauty of allegory. That's what we do. We veil it on purpose, not because it's so secret that mankind can never see this. It's veiled because it means something different to you than it does to me. And that beauty is you can then relate what that means to you, and I can relate what that means to me, and then we can have civil discussions on why that might not be the same. Freemasonry doesn't tell you, okay, this is the road to Gnosticism, this is the road to Rosicrucianism, this is the road to Kabbalahism. I can't think of what. Anyway, point being, Kabbalah it doesn't do that. What it says is, here's a door. If that's where you want to go, we showed you where the door is. But we're done. We're on this outer porch here, and we come together to talk about. If you walk through that door and you come back and say, hey, this is what I learned, great. Don't expect everybody to follow you through that door. And that's the difference between Freemasonry and the Western esoteric, Eastern esoteric traditions, the different shamanism, any of the isms are behind those doors. If you want to go explore, great. come back and tell me what you found.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why Freemasonry is so special, and that's what sets it apart from everybody else, is because we have no expectation of bringing everybody with us down into those through those doors. Freemasons are like, okay, there they are. That's open for you. The initiatic experience is those doors are now open.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to take those doors and go explore, okay, be very careful. We're here for you, but don't expect us to go wandering through those doors too. If it's not my path, I'm not going to do it. So there's a door for historians. There's a door for everything. All those doors are open.
Well, so here's an interesting idea. We talked about the idea that Freemasonry is not a religion because a religion has some level of salvation associated with it. Although I think if we think about it, we know that that's not 100% true, because Buddhism doesn't really have a salvation component, neither does Taoism, and they're still considered religion. If we add in the idea that we are God beyond our ego, and we posit the idea that we're creating through Masonry a relationship with ourselves, I would potentially say that you're talking about a salvation experience and you're talking about a religious experience. If we go that route, your thoughts?
It's not a new concept to me, and I can't disagree with that. That's not necessarily my path.
Mm-hmm.
So if that is a path that you want to, focus on and pursue, there's a little bit more to it, to me, in that a lot of that focuses on, I create my own existence, I can change my own existence, I can modify, adapt, overcome, whatever. And it may or may not, this is a very personal thing.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to know. It may not include, why am I here to experience this? If I can change everything, if I am God, and I can change anything that I want to, why am I here to experience this? Or how do I experience and understand what it is that I need to experience here to take that to the level of integration or reintegration? There's a couple of different ways of looking at this. A lot of the people that are traveling a very similar path to what you're describing,
mm-hmm.
or maybe the same path, and again, that's a personal thing, look at this as a integration or reintegration. Those two words come up a lot. And the philosophy behind that is we're part of God.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that part to be true. We're all, know ye not, ye are the temple of God. God dwells within us. Our higher self connects to deity through, let's see, the physical, the four worlds: the physical, the psychical, the spiritual, and deity, the divine. Mm-hmm. And that's a Kabbalistic concept, but it's also a Rosicrucian concept and a couple of other isms that are out there, concepts, and not unknown or adopted to Catholicism and a lot of the Western religions, Christian-based religions. That the Christianity was based on very similar things. All this to say, what you're saying is integration, reintegration, or the concept that we are a part of or become our own version of God. That's a true statement. We are made in God's image, and we get to turn around and become that image if we can develop ourselves to that level and extent. Christ himself said, you can do what I do. He told his disciples that straight up. You can do what I do.
He said, I'm the least among you. You can all do what I do, right? So, and the concept, at least in the Orthodox faith, which I come from, there's the idea of theosis, which is, now, is theosis apotheosis? In other words, where you literally become God? Or is it saying you become like God? Or is it saying you take on the essence of God? I mean, there's a lot of hedging that happens in this area, because I don't think anybody's very comfortable with the idea of truly saying, yes, you can become the same as God. Because I don't think people understand what that is. So on some level, we hedge. And we say, well, it's almost that. It's pretty close. You're kind of in the garden. Maybe you get back to the garden. Can the garden be enough? Let's just go with garden. And stuff like that. So it's a weird one to me. And I'm not getting satisfying answers when I'm asking the question. I'm not saying from you, I'm saying in general.
That's one of the things that we have to focus with faith upon. That is literally the definition of faith. How I want to connect with deity is my own choice, my own free choice. How that happens is the path that we choose to take. The connection of yourself to deity may take all of those shapes. Well, Randy, 2 of those were exclusive to you. No, not necessarily. Maybe they're stepwise progressions and we haven't gotten there yet.
Very possibly.
Those are things that when we the only way to that point is a self-experience, and there's no, I think Christ did the very best that he could to give us the lessons of that transformative experience. I think that the Buddha, Bodhisattva, did the very best that he could in trying to relate that experience. I think that all of your prophets from you name it, across the globe have done what they could to explain them as best they could, how to follow those footsteps. I don't disagree with what you said. I think that there's a lot of, it sounds like it's mutually exclusive, but I don't believe that it is.
Yeah, to some extent, it almost to me feels like, I think people, their gut sense tells them what the path is, but they're not comfortable with that, and they want to try to minimize it because otherwise they feel like they're totally egomaniacal if they think that. And there are bad examples of egomaniacs that do think that, but they think they get sucked up into their own ego like Ziggy Stardust. So, it's like one of those kinds of things. Yeah. That's what I'd say about that.
A lot of it is wrapped in our own ego. A lot of it. I think you're absolutely right. I really agree with what you just said. It's a very deep statement. When we focus on our own personal beliefs and path, where does that lead us? What does that mean? Is it best for us to do the path alone? Is it best to do it with the company of brothers and Freemasonry, like we're doing now? This is the best example of Freemasonry I can give you, is that we're talking about our own individual beliefs, paths, philosophies, and we're able to communicate them without argument, without insults, without mudslinging. Oh my gosh, this is phenomenal. This. If there's anything else I could leave the viewers with right out there now, is this discussion on some of the deepest, most sensitive things that we feel and believe are open for other people to talk about, to discuss. And I will absolutely have people come up and say, Randy, you're wrong, because the Bible says this. Okay. All right. And they believe, they have faith that they are right.
And God bless them. It's nice to have, I talked to a buddy of mine who's a born again Christian, and this is not an indictment on born again Christianity by any means. I think it's whenever I've been to his church and stuff, but like on some level, I say, and again, it's my personal opinion, I look at it as a very simplified version of Christianity, almost like you're hanging out in the front hall of what Christianity could be. And you're like, I'm happy here. And if you're happy there, be happy there. And that's a great thing. But if you want to know more and you want to get into the esoterics, you want to get down rabbit holes and really find out the mechanisms of not only Christianity, but a lot of other religions around the world and all this other stuff, it's there for you.
Yes. And
So-
it should be. It should always be all open to everyone.
Yeah.
So,
I think there is a struggle though, because I feel like a lot of the newer individuals that get brought into the fraternity, new brothers, they don't necessarily find the right mentors. They don't necessarily have the opportunities to meet individuals like yourself, where there's a wealth of knowledge. And, I feel like a lot of these individuals join a lodge and then they get dragged into, they might be given a book, they're given the standard documentation, but nobody ever really gets into this deep philosophical discussion with them. And I think that's why, in a lot of ways, we haven't retained a lot of individuals. I think we've lost so many people in the fraternity because guys come out for dinner, which is great, and then they sit in a meeting. You can't agree on the electric bill, even though you got to pay the damn thing anyway. And, it's like you go home. And I think to that end, what would you recommend? Because, we have great programs like Mentor the Mentor, and, it's like they're definitely trying on the Grand Lodge levels, and they're really trying to help the fraternity. But what would you recommend for a newer brother or somebody that's not necessarily well versed in these esoterics and, the deeper symbolism of Masonry to, aside from just picking up some books, which is obviously a great idea, what would you say they should do to seek that and be able to connect to individuals like yourself?
watch your podcasts. Reach out to me. Reach out to you guys. Seriously. And the biggest lesson is patience. Patience.
Yeah.
Have patience that when the time is right, the teacher will appear. When the time is right, the message will be understood.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes sometimes it's not right for that message to come through. It may, people have to, have to understand that is a thing. So.
Absolutely. That does make sense. Now, Randy, we started a little bit late, and I know that you had blocked out 2 hours for us, which we greatly appreciate. So we don't want to trespass too much on your time, sir. So we may just end it a little early today, if that's okay with you. That way we'll get you on to doing what you need to do.
Duty calls, right?
No, we love having you on the program, my brother and friend, and we appreciate everything. You want to leave us with any particular words of wisdom as we sign off here?
The only path, no matter what religion, no matter what philosophy, no matter what you're looking at, no matter who's telling you any different, the only path that's out there, listen to the original teachers. The only path that's out there is within. You must contemplate, reflect, meditate, whatever the word is that you want to use. It has to be within. And then, if you fully understand inside from deep meditation, deep prayer, deep thought, then you can externally reflect that back out to the world. That's Masonry. That is all of the philosophies. That's everything.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, my friend.
Thank you.
Until next time. Absolutely. It's been a pleasure having you. Until next time,
Got to
this
get
has
you back
been,
on with I was going to say with Ben Wallace and
well, we want to bring Ben
bigger
on.
roundtable
Yeah, I've
discussion.
been trying to get him to nail him down to get him on here, and that'll be a lot of fun. Also, we'd like to try to get Bob Davis if we can. That would be a lot of fun to chat with him. I chatted with Chuck over the weekend, by the way, and he's seems to be feeling okay. Just we had a great conversation. So, but yes, until next time, this has been Brothers of the Arcana. I am your host or co-host, Alex Aldea.
I am co-host Dave Ferrigno. Thank you very much, Randy Sanders, for joining us today. Appreciate it, brother.
Take care, brothers.
See you next time.
God bless.